I was shocked to see that Mike Williams retired from the NFL, and there's no way for the Chargers to replace his specific skill set. But the good news is Tre Harris is now signed, and the starting job is very much in play.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. And David, I know we wanted to do this live show for the first day of training camp. We could have never known where we were going to have to start things today.
Man, I was so excited to be talking about Chargers football today, and we have to get it started by talking about a retirement. So just something I just never expected. It came completely out of the blue. I know this was shocking for all of us, and man, this is going to have a huge ripple effect on what happens in Chargers training camp.
Absolutely, across the entire roster. But the great news is that Tre Harris, their second-round pick, along with a lot of other second-round picks, is now signed, and it will be in training camp as soon as tomorrow, we would think. But it does really, open up the starting job for him for sure. I also have to talk about superhero Justin Herbert with his laser beam eyes. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. But man, David, we went from a minor injury on Wednesday to a retirement on Thursday. Not where we thought we were going to be starting the show today. We all knew that the biggest red flags with Mike Williams was going to be the injury history and the potential that you could lose him for the whole season. You didn't expect to lose him before you ever had him. This is pretty unexpected. I know there's going to be jokes. This could be shocking. The dude played in 18 games last year, right? After getting traded mid-season. It's not like he didn't play. He just wasn't himself. And it does feel like after whatever this latest injury was, it's not worth trying to come back from, is kind of the vibe that I get from it. It sucks for a player who has so many special moments with the Chargers to not kind of have this last final hurrah with this team like we thought he would.
Yeah, it just seems like it's very rare in football and across any sport that you get to go out on your own terms. A lot of the times, those decisions are made for you, and it just seems like this right here is an accumulation of all the injuries that he has withstood throughout his career. And I think this last one, they might have thought it might have been something that he could get over, that he could rehab, that he could get through. And I think what most likely happened to me is that it turned out to be something more serious than they had originally anticipated. And it was probably something where he's like, well, that's it. I'm done. I got to think about the rest of my life. He's 30 years old. He's still got hopefully a lot of life in front of him. And there's more to life than football. And man, it's going to be really sad because I was a huge Mike Williams fan. How could you not be, for all the things that he's done for the Chargers, all the incredible catches, the amount of times he put his body on the line for this football team is something I'll never forget.
Well, especially because him making those big plays was a lot of the reason why he was so banged up constantly, right? Because he was constantly putting his body on the line to get wins in big moments. And I saw someone post a highlight video, a 10-minute long highlight video.
I watched it
on Twitter. And it's crazy that dude has a 10-minute long, not an easy catch in their highlight video. The entire thing was him making improbable, miraculous catches. And I think it's time to put some respect on his name now that it is him calling it quits. He's a borderline top 10 receiver in Chargers history, and the stats back it up. From the years 2019 to 2022, he averaged 58 catches for 950 yards and about 5 touchdowns per season. That's a hell of a run, especially when they had Keenan Allen on the team pretty much that entire time. He ends his career 13th in receptions, 13th in receiving touchdowns, 10th in receiving yards in Chargers history. So if this is, this is it, man, he really will go down as one of the underrated players, especially considering where he started. That 11 catch, 0 touchdown first rookie season where he was written off so many times as a bust, but also as a chief killer, right? The only two times the Chargers beat the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, were huge Mike Williams games. It was the 3-touchdown, 2-point conversion game with Philip Rivers as a quarterback, and then the late go-ahead touchdown with basically less than 30 seconds left against the Chiefs in Justin Herbert's only victory over Patrick Mahomes. And as much as maybe the stats won't tell how much of a special player he is, you're going to remember it by the moments, by the game-tying touchdown against the Raiders. They set up the game-winning score against the Saints, game winner against Tennessee only a couple of years ago in 2023. Setting up the game winner in Denver from Philip Rivers in triple coverage. I mean, it was just so many special moments for Mike Williams, but there's an impact on the field right now for the Chargers, and that's really where the biggest concern comes now, because David, this is someone who, if you were kind of expecting, to be one of the bigger improvements in their offense. You were brought in to be a very specific type of player that could win on the outside because the Chargers were deficient there, and that is now leaving a really young wide receiving room, and now those roles that they thought they had with Mike Williams, somebody else is going to have to fill them.
Yeah, they are. And just to kind of put a bow on it, two stats that I really have to get into here. The league average for contested catch rate is 45%. Mike Williams in his career had a 54.4 contested catch percentage rate, which is 10% higher than the league average, just to show you how incredible. And also, he had a drop rate of 0.0 on throws 25 plus yards or air yards down the football field in his career, and that's 91 targets. That just goes to show you throw the ball up to Mike Williams down the football field, he was coming down with it or nobody else was. Like, it's just unbelievable, his ability to do that. But to circle back now all of a sudden the Chargers have an incredibly young wide receiver core. I mean, you look at it, it's Jalen Reagor in there, and then everybody else has 3 years or less of experience in the NFL.
2 years.
2 years or less, with, obviously Quentin Johnston going into his third season.
Yeah.
This is a room that clearly needs another body, in my opinion. It is a very, very young room. And the thing that sucks is there's not a lot of people out there. There's not a lot of opportunities out there to be able to change this room. So they're going to have to rely heavily on who they have in the building.
Yeah, I think the thing is, just to put it kind of, in plain terms, this is someone who had a decent chance to be the wide receiver 2 for the Chargers this season, or was at least in the mix for that behind Ladd McConkey, and now you're taking him completely out of the equation, which means more pressure on Quentin Johnston to take that next leap, more pressure on Tre Harris, which we'll talk about now that he's signed too. But this is a big blow. You thought you had something that could have cured one of your biggest weaknesses last year that showed up in that playoff game, someone that can get those balls in gotta have it moments. And there was a whole lot of gotta have it moments in Mike Williams' resume. So it just is a big hole now that you thought you were going to fill. I guess now better than, having it mid-season and he's gone for the rest of the season, because it is the start of training camp, but not ideal, because you probably would have attacked it differently had you known you were not going to have him. But I know a lot of people, David, are bringing up the hallowed name of Keenan Allen. Unfortunately, I don't necessarily see it. Even with this loss, as much as he means something to this team and kind of what he brings to the table, it's not a one-for-one fit to me.
No, it's definitely not a one-for-one fit. Keenan and Mike have completely different skill sets. But I think a lot of people are saying, Keenan's going to play completely in the slot, and that's where Ladd's going to be. And, there's some truth and merit to that. But also, they're going to move Ladd McConkey around. They're not going to just have him in the slot. They know what he's capable of. And also, don't let him hear you call him a slot receiver, because he absolutely does not want to be called that. And I understand it, right? This is a guy that when he was put on the outside, he was making big catches. But, yeah, Mike Williams, notorious ability to go up and get the football. Keenan Allen, a much different receiver, a guy that, really relies on precision, on route running, on having very strong hands. That's, all part of what he brings to the table. And yeah, there's probably a little bit of clashing in styles, but there's not a lot of people out there. So yeah, Keenan Allen, I think, is a name that I brought up as someone that makes a lot of sense in my opinion. Probably not a perfect fit. It's not. And so there's not a lot of people out there that can fill that skill set that Mike Williams brought to the table.
There isn't. The options are limited. You can save the Gabe Davises. Amari Cooper, maybe, right? You had a cast off from Buffalo last year and Puna Ford that ended up working out pretty well for you, but the options are limited. I mean, I just don't know how they coexist just for an entire season. Yes, they can both play outside, but it's also not where either of them is at their best. And do you go sign a guy when you're going to consistently, if you're not using Ladd McConkey where he's best and then you're using Keenan Allen in the slot, I mean, one of these guys is going to be disadvantaged because they're both, I mean, especially at this age for Keenan, best in the same spot. So I don't necessarily see it. I mean, there's do you want veteran leadership? Can he still bring some things to the table? Sure. But I mean, Keenan Allen, I'm sure, wants a starting job and might wait for that to happen. I don't know if the Chargers guarantee him that, even if you could argue that they should. But we still have more because it was the first day of training camp. But we also got other big news because Tre Harris is officially signed and now a starting role for him is very much in the cards if he can go take it. So we're talking about all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action anyways. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. And I know it was a slow sports week, but that just gives you more time to focus on the Open Championship that is going on right now. And even after day one, it is shaping up to be a really good one. But one of the best things I saw on FanDuel is if you want to go for the long shots, you can actually bet on a field that doesn't have Scotty Scheffler or Rory McIlroy in it. That means you can bet on your Cinderellas and not get squashed by one of the giants. But if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. David, we still have more to get into because of the biggest things that happened on the first day of Chargers training camp didn't actually happen on the field. And I don't think the timing of this next move we're going to talk about is coincidental, but Tre Harris, the second-round wide receiver the Chargers drafted, has signed his rookie contract after a couple other rookies signed earlier in the day, even in the last couple of days. It felt really good that he could be back very soon because really, like we talked about before, it just needed that domino effect. You just need to see who is kind of next to you and what the guarantees they're getting is so that you can decide what yours are. And I don't know if we have the numbers yet and how much of his contract got guaranteed, but he's back. And that's all that's really important, David. This was something that could have turned into something ugly, especially given the Mike Williams situation. But now he should be. I mean, I don't see any reason why he's not back on the field tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I think he definitely will be back on the field tomorrow. And yeah, it was just a waiting game, right? They just had to see what the framework was going to look like for the players that were picked ahead of him, right? That was when we were going to figure out, and the picture was going to become more clear, what the level of guarantees each of these players subsequently were going to receive, depending on what the guys got in front of them. So they finally got that done. And yes, obviously when your, supposed starting X decides to retire, then yes, that is going to put a lot of pressure and a lot of, okay, let's get this done. Time is of the essence. We don't need our rookie, probably, to be starting X receiver missing any time on the football field when he needs to establish chemistry with Justin Herbert and strengthen that chemistry. And the only way that you can do that is on the field, getting those reps. That is what is required to be able to get that relationship going. And so when the Chargers kick off in Brazil, he is confident and comfortable throwing the football to Tre Harris.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't say he has the starting position right now, but I definitely think that, if he is the guy that would seemingly fill that role. The problem is he hasn't even had a padded practice yet, so you can't really go giving him the starting job yet. He still is going to have to go out there and earn it, but that is the best case scenario for you. And honestly, that has always kind of been the best case scenario for this team. If you're talking about improvements offensively, the best case scenario would be, hey, you signed Mike Williams, who was there in case you needed to kind of slowly bring Tre Harris along. But if Tre Harris just explodes onto the scene like we saw with Ladd McConkey, he would have surpassed Mike Williams anyways, right? I mean, at his age and kind of what that role is going to be, because he is really the only, if you're trying to fill this puzzle piece and you're trying to say, hey, who can bring you the most attributes that Mike Williams is going to bring you to the table, there's really only one guy that fits that. I mean, the two biggest receivers on the roster right now are Quentin Johnston and Tre Harris, and Tre Harris actually plays like a big receiver where Quentin Johnston just has not. We know 2 seasons in that Quentin Johnston is not an X receiver. He's not going to play on the outside. beat press coverage consistently enough, win one-on-one matchups down the field consistently enough, and be able to make those 50-50 catches and win those one-on-ones when they went to him. They tried. They gave him those opportunities last year, and he still can get better. But the best situation was always going to be Tre Harris coming onto the scene like a Ladd McConkey and just kind of taking that role right away, which Mike Williams was kind of in the way of that picture. We couldn't see that. But I do think it's huge for him to be back on the field. The nice thing is you're talking about a guy that we heard the coaches rave about during the entire offseason about how much extra work he was putting in alongside Oronde Gadsden, the second-year, fifth-round rookie tight end. Both these guys were putting in extra work, and Justin Herbert said that's actually the reason why he doesn't feel that Tre Harris has missed too much. He said, I know he's not going to miss a beat. He's done an incredible job. He's picked up the offense really quickly. He is a true pro, but got to be out there, got to be getting in shape like we heard from Sanjay Lal. And now, David, that X-receiver spot, like Junior Colson, it's your starting job to lose at linebacker, right? When you're talking about the receivers and that specific role, the one guy that brings the most to the table in that regard is Tre Harris, and it's not particularly close.
No, it's not. And you know, when somebody at the top of that depth chart, you know, decides to hang it up and they're no longer a part of that picture, then everybody kind of gets moved down the pecking order, and their opportunity gets that much bigger and that much more attainable. Now that those guys at the back end, you know, that we kind of already kind of wrote off, said, hey, these guys don't really have any chance. Now they do. And now with Tre Harris getting signed and only missing one practice, I think that's, you know, very, very important that he gets on that football field and he can show what he can do, and he can take hold of that. Yeah, it's not going to be handed to him. The Chargers are all about competitors welcome for sure, but now, you know, that they're going to have to put this thing together, and hopefully he's able to catch hold. They don't really have the luxury of figuring out how he fits in this puzzle. They don't have that ability like they did with Ladd McConkey, and they kind of took 5 or 6 games to figure out what he's capable of doing. They might not have that same luxury this year. They might have to put, you know, Tre Harris right out of the frying pan and into the fire.
And that's just what it feels like. Tre Harris was always drafted to be the future for your X position. He was the X outside guy that could hopefully be the, you know, the Robin to Ladd McConkey's Batman, for lack of a better term, and to be the long-term answer there. That just, you know, this just speeds up the clock. And I mean, obviously, you know, we're big Tre Harris fans. You've heard Joe Ortiz talk about, you know, all the Jackson Dart highlights, and he's afraid the other teams were going to be reminded, oh, hey, Tre Harris is still out there and he's pretty good. He has the injury history too, right? That's the only reason he even lasted for where the Chargers could pick him in the second round. And I'm super high on him. If he's 80% of what he was at the collegiate level, and 80% of that translates to the next level, you're talking about a huge upgrade over what you had at that position last season. And you know, at his top end, at where his ceiling could be, you're talking about someone who could play a much bigger role than even Mike Williams could with the chemistry that he already had with Justin Herbert. But now it's about earning that trust. And we also found out from Justin Herbert that Justin Herbert's been out there since the rookies got there. So he is a few days behind as far as catching footballs and gaining the trust of Justin Herbert. But as we've found out, Justin Herbert will give you the chances. I mean, some guys, maybe he's given too many chances, but it'll be up to Tre Harris to go take advantage of those and to go win that starting spot and run away with the X receiver, because that puts everyone in a better spot. Ladd can be in the slot and not have to worry about so much attention. You can put Quentin Johnston as your Z receiver and give him those type of routes in a situation where he's much better suited. That is all in play if Tre Harris goes and grasps that starting job. But it's also good news for the other guys like you talked about, including Jalen Reagor, who had the biggest play of the day. If you didn't see it from the Charger social media account, the first bomb of spring or training camp hits differently, and it was a really great throw, just a pinpoint dime down the field. Daniel Popper said it was 50 yards, and you see a full extension kind of fingertip grab from Jalen Reagor, contorting his body, somehow coming down with it. And it's hard when you see that, David. We know the coaching staff loves this guy, to not think, hey, this dude just probably got a job today with the Mike Williams news.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that we both originally did not have on our way too early 53-man roster prediction. And, you know, I think for good reason. It just seemed like, yeah, this is a guy that the Chargers liked and, you know, they value. But now all of a sudden he's the veteran in the group, and all of the things that they're talking about him, they're going to give him every single opportunity now to stick and be kind of one of the leaders in that group. Obviously, not leaders as far as wide receiver one. We know who that is. That's Ladd McConkey, no question about it. But they still need other skill sets. They still need guys that can go stretch the field, that can go open things up and allow Justin Herbert to use that big arm on a more consistent basis. If Jalen Reagor can stack these type of plays, because, I mean, everybody can have a one-off, right? Everybody can have a big play. It's how can I do it consistently every single day? How can, not, the big touchdowns, but how can I consistently make the catches, make the plays over and over to where I have a resume that speaks so loud that he doesn't have to say anything at all?
I mean, the thing is, the guy hasn't had more than 8 catches since 2021, so it's just hard to be excited about it at this point, right? And he's going to have to still go earn it. But, hey, Brendan Rice now back in play, potentially, who brings some of those ex-wide receiver aspects as well.
Yep.
Justin Herbert said of Jalen Reagor, he can basically do it all. So I do think he's very much in play now. It was always a numbers game, and he was always wide receiver 7 when we were doing the math, which is why we didn't have him on that initial 53-man roster. But now, he's squarely wide receiver 6 unless somebody takes it away from him, it feels like. But he did have the biggest first play of training camp this year, right? I mean, that bomb was super pretty. KLS, Keandre Lambert-Smith, another guy whose, role becomes enhanced now with this, also made a play, caught a touchdown from Justin Herbert as well. But I don't even know how any of those guys can focus because Justin Herbert was out there wearing red contact lenses looking like he's Superman trying to send laser beams through them. And is this a Jameis Winston LASIK situation? Is there another level of Justin Herbert that got unlocked with his crazy red contacts? We're talking about all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Man, David, there was so much to talk about from day one of Chargers training camp, but a lot of it was just kind of what we were going to always see, whether it was, Rashawn Slater signing or, reporting and actually being out there practicing, the whole Zion Johnson, Bradley Bozeman thing. And Najee Harris news as well we have to get into. But it has to start with Justin Herbert, who surprised everyone with red contact lenses looking crazy out there the first day of practice. So supposedly to help him out a little bit.
Yeah, that was insane to see that. I wasn't expecting it. But he basically said, hey, they are functioning like sunglasses. Sometimes when it gets bright, my eyes have a tough time. He said he tried to use the visor beforehand. It just didn't really work out well for him. So he's trying something new, and it seems to be working. And hey, anytime you can get a supercomputer, any kind of enhancements, then I am all for it. So if that's what it takes, if you're going to go out there looking like a superhero, then fine by me.
Man, it feels so futuristic to talk about, hey, we don't even need visors anymore. We'll just put red contacts in the dude's eyes, and those will actually serve as his visor or his sunglasses in this case. And he did say that he thought he could actually use them in a game if he needed to, right? Which reminds me, I think it was Kyle Vanden Bosch that used to go out there with red contacts just as a crazy person trying to track down other teams' quarterbacks and yelling crazy stuff at them. But Cameron Dicker was actually just on a podcast talking about how him and Justin had these red contact lenses and they were trying out, went into an ice cream shop, and then basically had all the people around them looking at them like they were crazy because there's these two, vampire-looking dudes that are just standing there with red eyes acting totally normal. So he did talk about, he said, I think the guys were a little bit surprised because I guess he just showed up in the huddle with red eyes without any sort of contacts, which I feel like is the exact kind of Justin Herbert, type of humor that he likes to employ out there. Yeah, but he said it felt like they were all pretty hyped up and said, hey, we're going to score because of that. But I do think Justin Herbert, underrated, funny, but man, hey, if this can help, if brightness was an issue, if you have sensitive eyes, hey, any advantage is an advantage, and hopefully this, maybe solves some of those things that he was dealing with on super bright days, a lot of, 1:30 kickoffs. But Rashawn Slater reported, David, and that was great news. Not only did he report, but he was out there on the practice field, something we've seen Chargers on this team right now in identical situations not doing, either holding in, not practicing, or just holding out entirely until they got their contract. Not the case with Rashawn Slater, obviously a football guy through and through, but hopefully him being out there, him practicing at this point means that contract talks are at least in a good enough place, an amicable place for him to be out there.
Yeah, and when Joe Ortiz, the Chargers general manager, talked about it with the the beat reporters, he said, "Hey, we've had good conversations with his agents. Seems like these things are going to take a little bit of time, as they said, with the kind of the scale of the contract that is going to be signed eventually. And yeah, the fact that he showed up, that he feels confident and comfortable to go out there and practice." And put his body on line at risk means that things should be getting done here pretty shortly. I mean, it feels like if we weren't getting close to the finish line, I don't see why he would put himself out there on the football field and put himself at any kind of risk when we're talking about the amount of money that he eventually is going to be seeing here very, very shortly. But yes, it's great news to have him out there protecting Justin Herbert at all times, where he should be and hopefully is going to be for the next 4 to 6 years.
The offensive line can't get worse, right? I mean, I understand you can only improve it so much. You can't let it get worse. If you let that dude walk out, you become much worse immediately, and then you're maybe starting another decade-long search for the next franchise left tackle or a franchise tackle in general, even if Joe Alt could move over. But yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is here, the next checkpoint will be once the padded practices start, is he still out there? It's one thing to kind of do it at the tempo and speed they're doing it right now, and another thing to be out there in full pads with grown men rushing at you and doing one-on-one situations the way that they do once the pads come on. But great news. I mean, as good of news as you could get on day one of training camp off the field. And we also got to see the offensive line that was out there, including David Zion Johnson at left guard and Bradley Bozeman at center on day one of training camp.
Of course, and they said that this rotation was going to be what it looks like basically for the foreseeable future, where they're going to trade off, whether it's going to be Zion Johnson at center one day and Bradley Bozeman at guard, and then they're going to switch it up. Today they had Bradley Bozeman at center and Zion Johnson at guard, and so we're going to see how long this is going to take. I mean, we know originally Coach Harbaugh said 8 to 10 days. I think it might be a little bit longer than that, to be quite honest with you, but this is where it really begins. This is where the battle starts. Getting on the football field, getting next to all of the guys that you're going to be suiting up with and playing football games with on Sundays. This is where it starts. So we'll see when the padded pads come on, when they start to be able to separate themselves, because you can't truly evaluate a physical position like offensive line without playing with the shells on.
Absolutely not. You can't do it. And now we'll see once that starts, where he's at. But then it's really going to be the preseason game, and I hope we get an extended look at it. I don't know how you could, potentially think that he doesn't need all of those snaps that he could get. I thought another interesting thing just with the offensive line, though, was probably good news that Trey Pipkins, according to Jim Harbaugh, will be sticking as the swing tackle. They're not going to mess around with him trying to compete as well for that left guard position, which he shouldn't. He should focus on tackle. We saw what he looked like as a guard. Anyways, in a dire situation, you could put him at guard, whatever. But also, they're going to let Andre James play center, right? And they're also, going to keep other guys where they should be in that sense. I didn't want Trey Pipkins, trying to fight for the left guard spot and then being the swing tackle. I didn't want Andre James trying to play left guard, even though he's never played left guard before. I would say the other thing, though, that was kind of interesting, that it was Jamari Sawyer with the second team offensive line, according to Daniel Popper, and Branson Taylor was the right guard. So maybe that kind of tells you that there's not necessarily a chance that Branson Taylor is going to be competing for that left guard spot, which is kind of exactly what we thought. But when Jim Harbaugh first talked about this, he was like, yeah, Jamari Sawyer is going to fight for left guard, Bozeman, Zion Johnson, Trey Pipkins, Andre James could play left guard, I'm sure, you know what I mean? So it feels like at least we've kind of cut out that nonsense, and guys are where they should be, competing where they should be, spending all of their time at those spots. But it was interesting hearing Justin Herbert just talk about how the center has to be the fastest mentally on the offensive line, and that's kind of what Zion Johnson's trying to do right now, but that Herbert thinks he's capable of doing it. Yeah, you do. You have to be smart. You have to be able to pick things up quickly. You have to identify things very quickly, and that's, a huge kind of gulf that he's going to have to overcome based on where we saw him last. But last piece of news that came out from day one of Chargers training camp was that Najee Harris officially was placed on the non-football injury list. Nothing to be concerned about. It was expected. He is back in the building. He's in meetings, according to Jim Harbaugh, so they have everybody here right now. But it feels like the vibe is they expect him back sooner rather than later, but I still haven't seen his face yet, so it's very hard to tell.
Yeah, it is, and I think the Chargers were at the same level up until some point today, where they hadn't seen his face at all. Obviously, they had correspondence with his doctors where he was, at Stanford and all that. I'm sure
doesn't make me feel better about it.
They were in constant communication,
sure.
but yeah, I haven't seen it. Is he wearing an eye patch? Like, what does this dude actually look like?
Oh my God.
It's definitely concerning, but. As of right now, the non-football illness, injury list, whatever, is not really consequential until we get to cut down. If he's still on there at cut down, then he's going to have to miss actual game time. So until then, it's just roster kind of gymnastics, not really much to worry about.
At the same time, we said the exact same thing about Mike Williams and his minor injury a couple of days ago, and we said,
I know.
The PUP list is nothing to worry about until they start the regular season, right? I mean, that's just kind of what it is. Like, my God, please let us not see a Najee Harris retirement tomorrow. Oh, my God. Like, this has just been such a weird start to Chargers training camp. But Omarion Hampton is out there, and that's the one thing we've been talking about. And I mean, if you listen to Jim Harbaugh, he's ready to see what it looks like. Said he's looked good in pads, David, or looked good without pads, and will look even better with them.
He definitely will be. I mean, Omarion Hampton looks like an absolute monster. A guy that's just ripped, kind of shredded to the gills, and a guy that has all the pedigree, had all the success in college. I want to see how it translates when the pads come on, where he can actually run through some people and kind of show the type of player he's going to be in this Jim Harbaugh Chargers offense.
Yeah, and he should still have a big role in this offense, and I think they need him still. But I think, like in the case of Najee Harris, and even the case of Mike Williams, man, like you had these insurance policies, you signed these guys in free agency, right before you had the draft. The best version of this Chargers team is that Omarion Hampton hits the ground running and is as dominant at the NFL level as that he was in college. And the same thing goes for Tre Harris, who, when we were telling the Chargers they should draft him, we were saying all of the things that he'll need to bring to the table now to go win that starting job. So it is sad, man. Mike Williams, a Chargers legend, at least a recent Chargers fans legend for sure. But it does, like, all of those things, man, open up opportunities, as cliche as it sounds. And now, Mike Williams won't stunt the growth potentially of a Tre Harris by taking snaps away from him. Omarion Hampton might not get stunted as much by Najee Harris and having to split carries with him, and the offense might be better for it. That's a big if. That's a big might, right? At the same time, we kind of trust this new regime to have some draft picks that might absolutely hit the ground running like their first and second round pick did last year, obviously drafted much earlier. But if they can do that again this year, man, I don't think this offense skips a beat. And honestly, even with the bad news we got today, might actually be in a better spot than anyone thinks right now. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. The good thing about a live Thursday night show and no Thursday morning show means we're going to be back tomorrow with you guys live again to talk about day 2 of Chargers training camp. So to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as following us on all of our social media where we post the show every day at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page as well, because we are the only daily Chargers podcast out there, and we're going to be with you after all of the days of training camp to give you guys the absolute latest on what's going on. But we'll be back with you guys tomorrow to talk about day 2 of Chargers training camp. Until then, take it easy and go Bulls.